Flipside by Bedhead, Chapter 14. The phrase rock in a hard place never seemed more appropriate to Spike. On the far side of the river, he could still see the unbelievable battle being carried out. Big Magatos, easily the largest stallion Spike had ever laid eyes on, clashing with a fabled Ursa Minor. Though the star bear looked like it could easily swallow a pony in one gulp, it was still roaring in frustration. Each and every swing it took at the farmer seemed to end with its claws striking water, ground, or cliff. Though the reporter was hoping he was just imagining that Mac was slowing down. As another cry came from the far bank, it was answered by a growl. Spike swallowed hard as he turned his gaze back to his side of the water. Somewhere, deep within the cave behind him, he could still see the soft glimmer of purple. The glow seemed to flare with each snarl that echoed from the darkness. Spike's mind felt like it was going to rip itself in half. It was just too much to try and wrap around the idea of something larger and fiercer than the creature across the river. Something began clopping against the ground again, pulling his attention in a third direction. Turning to his side, Spike saw Cheerilee was up and pacing about, her face a mask of worry as she chewed on her lower lip. "Cheerilee?" Spike asked. Watching the mare, she moved back and forth. "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think." She apologized quickly, before turning to her companion. "Oh, there has to be something we can do!" Spike nodded numbly. His mind was already blanking out again, in some sort of strange instinct to preserve what of itself it could. He barely twisted the sound of another oar from across the river. "It's just, nothing about this feels right," Cheerilee went on, resuming her pacing. "A baby wandering around on its own, and its mother." Something growled into the cave again, the purple glow dancing off the walls. The schoolteacher paused and looked around into the cavern, raising an eyebrow. "Its mother must be a real monster to control that!" Spike choked out, jerking his head to the fight across the river. His companion turned back to the Ursa Minor, and suddenly let out a sharp grasp. Spike jumped to his hose as Cheerilee covered his muzzle. "He roars, she responds, but she's not coming out," Cheerilee said, eyes going wide. "Even though every pony parent would know he needs help." "Come again?" Spike asked. "What if," Cheerilee gasped out, as she turned back to the cavern, "what if it's because she can't?" Spike opened his mouth to speak, only for a blur of purple to race past him and into the cave. He sat in silence for a brief moment, and before his mind realized the blur had been Cheerilee. He scrambled to his hooves, weak light shining from his horn as he charged after her. "Cheerilee!" Spike yelled, voice echoing from the cave walls. "Cheerilee, wait!" He didn't have far to go. The teacher soon caught in his light. From far outside the cave, another roar rang out. Cheerilee didn't seem to be paying attention, though. Her eyes looked straight ahead. Spike stumbled to a halt next to her, his eyes adjusting to the dim light she was providing. "Oh my goodness," Cheerilee said, voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, you poor dear." Spike followed her gaze and stared to disbelief at weighing him. His eyes began to hurt, to try and take in the size of the creature. How any of them could have missed the cave when looking from the cliff was beyond him, given how large it truly had to be. Even though its body was prone, it still easily dwarfed Town Hall. Massive beast shaped roughly like a bear, its huge fangs extending from its upper jaw. Its purple-lined fur faded at the light of the stars, glowing within it, as it let out a weakened growl. The glow seemed to be muted, buried by numerous stalactites of obsidian stone, planted on either side of each limb. That's... Spike could feel his head spinning as he tried to take it all in. "That's an Ursa Major," Cheerilee confirmed with a nod. Purple Mare moved closer, placing a hoof against one of the black stones. The Ursa Major snarled and began to swipe its paw, only to be forced to a halt. Stalactites kept the limb firmly sandwiched between them, preventing it from moving any further. Spike let out a sigh of relief as the same fate befell its other forepaw. So she can't move?" Spike realized as his legs stopped trembling. "Guess why she didn't come running." Skyscraper-sized beast snarled at the reporter. He jumped back, his horn extinguished with a soft pop sound, leaving only the Ursa's purple glow. Spike looked at Cheerilee, only to see the mare taking a few deep breaths as she turned away from the stalactite nearest to her. "Here!" Cheerilee shouted, lancing out with her back hooves. The solid impact of hooves on stone rang through the cave. Spike covered his ears against the noise, eyes going wide as the teacher prepared for another buck. Are you crazy? Spike shouted, sprinting forward and putting himself between Cheerilee and her target. What are you trying to do? I'm trying to help her! Cheerilee insisted, pointing at the Ursa Major. Spike, don't you see what must have happened? When that earthquake from earlier hit, the Ursa Minor must have escaped. But this one didn't, Spike realized, looking back to the huge Ursa sign. So the Ursa outside is just scared, and probably more than a little upset, Cheerilee confirmed, gesturing to the beast. All the while, Mama Ursa is stuck here, listening while she can't do anything! Another roar reached the cave, bouncing off the walls for a few seconds. The Ursa Major growled again, his Spike's hooves shuffled uncomfortably. It must have been a surprise, as the soft hoof hit his chin. She needs our help just as much as Big Mac, Cheerilee said, eyes pleading. Maybe this way we could save them both! Spike's mouth drew into a grim line as he looked back at the Ursa Major. Her purple light flared again, and her eyes looked back on the exit of the cave. I hit-pitched whine escaped her muzzle as more sounds of bow being carried down. The Starbear's massive yellow eyes looked at Cheerilee. I reached past Spike to pat her paw. I really hope you know what you're doing, Spike said in a trembling voice as he stepped aside. Cheerilee smiled as he moved up to the stalactite once more. She turned, took a deep breath, and lashed out again. The sound of hooves impacting stone echoed once more as the Ursa Major lifted its paw once more. A soft rattling sounded as a few stone tips from the spot struck and fell. Twilight? Tim turned fired, slowly waving one hoof in front of the dragon's face. No response. The tan stallion just shook his head and made another mark on the ground. Despite the mud's poor ability to hold impressions, he still counted 15 of them. He slowly let out a sigh as he rustled Twilight's head spines a little. Even assuming some room for error, he counted approximately 15 minutes since he had woken to the purple reptile's voice. 15 minutes he spent with the little one cradled against him, trembling like a leaf. As he'd been alternating between opening her eyes and staring out into the darkness and squeezing them touch sight. That seemed to make a difference either way, and in all that time, Tyntar had been unable to get her to say a word. Miss Twilight, I know things seem grim. He tried to encourage before letting out a sigh. Oh, that's not helping, is it? His back throbbed as no one answered. The Earth Stallion winced in pain as he tried to shift his weight. He drew a shuddering gasp in agony, stabbed through his spine. Quickly lay still. Well, at least my back's not getting worse. He tried to joke, only for Twilight to cringe even harder against him. Ah! He trailed off, letting his head slump to the muddy ground. He felt the unpleasant sensation of mud on half of his face, but just rolled his eyes. Half of his body was already covered in muck. The other half was still slightly damp, thanks to being so close to the river. At the very least, Twilight's scaly body was warm. Tyntar was willing to bet that was the only reason he wasn't going numb. He reached out and drew another muck in the mud. 16. He looked up to the moon again, his brow furrowed in concentration. Strangely enough, worry 4, Twilight aside, he found fear wasn't the first thing coming to mind. Far be it from me to complain, Tyntar commented, flicking some mud from his hoof. But this being the Everfree Forest, I expect something to have found us by now. Splash! Tyntar mentally cursed as the water splashed from the river up to his hindquarters. The old adage, be careful what you wish for, was ringing in his ears as he struggled to twist toward the river. His back screamed in pain, joining Twilight. The dragon finally reacted at the sound of whatever hit the water. Tyntar could hear her claws slipping in the mud as he ran behind him. He struggled to lift his head a little further, and his eyes went wide. A shadow was rising from the water and clumsily stumbling towards him. Time-Turner! The dark shape exclaimed in a very familiar voice. There you are! The tan pony's breath hissed in his throat for a second, as the figure stepped into the moonlight. Dizzy Dew stood there, water dripping from her now-soaked mane and tail. Her wall-eyed gaze seemed to be smiling, almost as broadly as she was her one eye cocked onto the muddy stallion. Dizzy! Oh, thank goodness! Tiny cheered in relief. Did you bring the others?
Well, one of them,
Ditsy said, before a rustle of wings cut her off. You alright, Ditsy? Thunderlane asked, as the Pegasus stallion descended into view. His wings suddenly halted upon seeing Time Turner. The dark-colored pony gasped as he landed, his nose sinking into the mud. Jaw dropped as he turned to Ditsy. You found him! He said, voice tense with disbelief as a smile grew on his features. Ditsy, you found him! None too soon, I might add. Time Turner confirmed with a slight chuckle. Though I'd hope you'll pardon me if I don't stand to seek a hoof missed you.
It was nothing, Ditsy said, blushing a bit. I guess it was lucky I was flying so low.
Yeah, Time Turner said, moving to Time Turner's side. Come on, TT, let's get... The airplane cringed as Thunderlane trailed off in a sharp gasp. There was no doubt in his mind that the Pegasus had noticed the massive bruise. One that was still aching from Time Turner's efforts to move. Yes! Rather unfortunate side effect of my attempt to help Miss Twilight, Time Turner explained, feeling a brush of feathers along his back. I think I might need a hoof up. Thunderlane just nodded. The air stallion winced as he felt a wing slowly work on his way under his side. Time Turner's teeth dug into his lip as he tried not to cry out. Sorry, Thunderlane and TT. This isn't going to feel good. Thunderlane apologized. Ditsy, I need you to help me get him onto my back.
You got it,
Ditsy stared, snapping a quick salute before moving to their Pegasus' other side.
This ain't win.
All right, Thunderlane said, the muscles of his wing tensing. 1, 2, 3! Time Turner clenched his jaw as the wing lifted. He rolled, his hose going limp as pain shot through his body. All his senses were lost in a burst of agony before the mayor's aide found his legs dangling from Thunderlane's side. He twisted his nose as his muzzle was buried into the other stallion's mane. Talk to me, TT, Thunderlane said, turning his head to look at him. You gonna be okay? As long as the ride is smoother than loading, Time Turner groaned, raising his head to clear his mohawk. Sorry to be a bother. Don't worry about that. I'll take it easy. Promise, Thunderlane said, wings spreading slightly as he balanced. Now, all we have to do is find Twilight. Twilight? Time Turner asked, looking around. But she's right here. He trailed off as his eyes searched the river bank. Despite the moonlight shining down, there was no sign of the purple dragon anywhere. She was right here. Twilight! He called out, causing Thunderlane to flatten his ears and wince. Twilight, where are you? Much to his surprise, Ditsy put a hoof over his mouth. She had a little smile on her face as he pointed to a nearby bush. Time Turner stared at the foliage, his eyes growing wide as he saw it tremble slightly. Amelia carefully walked toward it, her hostess softened by the muddy ground. Ditsy, Thunderlane said, raising a hoof. I'm not sure that's a good...
Found ya!
Ditsy teared, sticking her head into the bush. There was a frightened scream and a flash of magenta fire. Ditsy yelped in surprise and fell back onto her rear, puffs of steam floating off her mane. The bush had a smoldering hole burnt into it, though which Twilight's trembling form was visible.
Ditsy?
She whispered, purple eyes growing wide as she stared out of the hole. Oh my gosh! Are you okay?
That was a neat trick, Twilight,
Ditsy said, sinking her head around dry mane.
That works better than my blow dryer.
Thunderlane rolled his eyes and let out a groan. Time Turner let a chuckle slip through, before Twilight turned her gaze to the two stallions. Glad to see you're doing better, Time Turner said, clearing his throat. Looks like we can get back to the others now. Sounds good to me, Thunderlane agreed with a nod.
Right,
Twilight said, starting to stand up. Let's... Another howl sounded in the distance, and the dragon gasped in flight. In a second, Twilight collapsed back to the ground and clapped her claws over her ears friends. A tear called over her cold claws as she just trembled in place.
Twilight?
Ditsy asked, tilting her head confusedly.
Are you okay?
No, I'm not.
We're still never free.
Twilight whimpered out, shaking her head. First it was a fog, then the cliff. Time Turner got help trying to help me, and there's all those howling things. She trailed off as another howl rang, somehow cringed even tighter. Thunderlane's wings slumped as he looked back to his passenger. Sabalome, I know it's you out there! So now what? I'm not, sir, Tintera admitted. Nancy looked one of his hosts from his chin. She's been in sock almost since we got out of the river. I thought she was frightened, but well. He trailed off, looking helplessly at the dragon. Twilight had her eyes squeezed shut, and more tears leaking out of the corner. Tintera's eyes wandered to Ditsy and stopped cold. The mare had a little smile on her face. Both her eyes focused firmly on the dragon. The Pegasus knelt down, putting herself eye to eye with the young reptile.
Poor Twilight. He must have been so scared.
Ditsy cooed, both freaking out, brushing away a few tears.
Hey, you want to know something that might help?
Twilight's eyes slowly opened, as Ditsy smiled broadened.
It's a trick I taught Dinky,
she said, wings flapping excitedly.
All you do is think about all the stuff that's scaring you, and then you find some new way to look at it all.
Mother of the freaking year, round 3. Tintera and Thunderlane's confused gazes met. Twilight apparently shared the feeling as she sniffled and wiped at her eyes.
A new way?
She said, her voice barely a whisper.
How? Well, how about this?
Ditsy asked. With that, the mare puffed out her cheeks and tilted her head. Her eyes crossed as Twilight stared in shock. Tintera felt a twinge of pain as Thunderlane adjusted his balance in order to face Hoof. Ditsy, Thunderlane grumbled, ignoring the streak of mud in his hoof left. What are you doing?
Oh, or how about this one?
Ditsy said, ignoring the stallion. Her tongue stuck out of her crunched up muscle. Tintera snickered a bit as the mare blew out her last raspberry. Twilight's body shook as a short chuckle made its way out of her claws covered her mouth.
Ah!
Ditsy teared, dropping the silly expression.
I saw a smile.
Before anybody could respond, Ditsy grabbed Twilight in her forelows and pulled her close. Baby dragon gasps as her captor's wings suddenly began to brush at her sides. Ditsy! What are you doing? Twilight tried to speak as the feathers tickled over her. Ditsy said with a bubbly laugh. Tintera and Thunderlane both stared in disbelief as the purple reptile collapsed into a fit of giggles. Ditsy was already laughing along, her wings not stopping for an instant. Tintera smiled, chest shaking as he covered his mouth to silence his own snickering. Thunderlane was rolling his eyes, but a smile coming to his face as well. Stop! Twilight begged, her smile not fading. I give you in. Ditsy smiled, releasing Twilight from her tickle torture. Dragon kept giggling a little as Ditsy brushed her hoof over her spines.
Feel a little better now?
She asked, gold eyes meeting Twilight's. Actually, yeah. Twilight realized, pressing off her scales.
But how? It's the same with Dinky when she's upset,
Ditsy said, with a proud flutter of her wings.
Things never seem so bad after you've had a good laugh.
She lowered one wing, forming a gentle ramp on her back.
Now, all aboard!
She encouraged.
Next up, Spike and the others.
Twilight nodded, scrambling up the offered wing and onto the mare's back. Tintera shook his head in disbelief as Ditsy began to try ahead. I have to admit, Miss Stew, Tintera said, causing the maid mare to look out. That was quite uplifting.
Ah, thanks,
Ditsy said, blushing again.
It's no big deal, Belle. After all, making ponies smile is my special talent.
Ditsy began trotting again, humming a little song. Tintera found himself staring at her bubble-marked flank as Thunderlane just stood in place. This what the bubbles mean? Thunderlane asked in a whisper before staring after her. I gotta admit, I never would have guessed that. The Ursa Minor snarled as it looked down at its paws. Then, it's about time, Nightmare Moon grumbled, still floating around the bear's ears. Big Mac groaned and squirmed, trapped between the massive beast's forepaws. Only his head and yolk stuck out from between his claws. The Ursa Minor listened to its giant stallion closer and snarled in his face. Bad pony! Nightmare Moon smiled, swirling down to bar Star Bear's limb. Her misty form swirled around Big Mac, causing him to shiver in response. "'Tis almost a pity," she said, smiling, as he felt Celestia straining against her prison. "A stallion like this could have been useful in my new guard." Her cloudy body floated away into the sky above. Celestia pleading rang through her mind as Nightmare Moon just smiled. Ursa's paws began to squeeze together, Big Mac clenching its jaw as his struggles continued. Then there was an explosive noise from across the river. Nightmare Moon felt her insubstantial body twist in midair as the wind itself rippled. A massive roar, putting to shame almost anything that Ursa Meyer managed, sent her spiraling into the cliff face. The alicorn's immaterial nature was the only thing that saved her from actually bending herself into the rock. What's an Equestria? Nightmare Moon gasped out, flying away from the cliff. Mama? The mare of darkness' jaw dropped as her Earth-sign ally turned to the river. Purple light was shimmering with an open cave mouth on the other side. Slowly, a face with massive fangs appeared in it, eyes growing wide. Mama! The Ursa Meyer cheered, releasing its grip on Big Mac. Your pony yelled at a yelp of surprise as he tumbled to the ground, landing with a solid thud. Nightmare Moon grit her teeth as the blue bear splashed into the river, wading towards its mother. The Ursa Major let out a happy-sounding roar as he squeezed her massive bulk out of the cave. Hi! Nightmare Moon shouted, flying to her at her star cub. Get back here! You aren't done with him yet! The Ursa Meyer happily ignored the furious alicorn, nestling against his mother's foreleg as he reached halfway point with her emergence. The larger bear let out a rumbling, cooing noise as her one paw struck her child's back. Nightmare Moon brought herself to a halt, eyes growing wide as he spotted a pair of purple specks run between the massive beast's legs. Everybody stay with me now! Aww! That's never not cute. Spike and Cheerily hopped down the stones, making it to the other side of the river. Big Mac was groaning as he managed to stand again, the other two stomping at his side. You alright? Spike asked. Been worse. Big Mac answered, shaking some dirt from his coat. Cheerily had a proud smile on her face as she gestured across the river. Big Mac turned and raised an eyebrow at the sight that awaited him. Ursa Major pulled the Meyer close and was licking some of the rock dust from his coat.
Aren't they cute together?
Cheerily asked, a broad smile on her face. Yeah, cute, Spike said, voice heavy with uncertainty. Ursa Major lifted from his cub to the trio of the ponies and let out a low growl. Something that looked like a smile spread across its fanged muzzle, and it gave a slow nod to the group. It gently nudged his cub, and the two slowly began to make their way upstream. Cheerily smiled and waved a huff and farewell to the retreating backsides. Nightmare Moon's jaw dropped as he watched the two walk away. Big Mac droned out before closing his own jaw. What just happened?
I'll explain on the way.
Cheerily promised, turning back downstream. Come on! Don't want to keep the others waiting! The three ponies took off, galloping along with the river's current. Nightmare Moon hovered in stunned silence, eyes following them. But how? She mouthed out. There was a snickering in the back of her mind. Her misty form trembled as something boiled away inside her. Shut up! She snapped at Celestia as she took off into the night once more.
Once the first rock broke, she just tore herself away free.
Cheerily explained as she cantered along.
Then Spike and I just followed her out.
Big Mac jawed his jaw once more as the teacher wrapped up her story. Spike just nodded his head, understanding the express of the Earth Stallion War. The reporter could still feel a little dirt stuck to his own chin. So, that bear was just a cub? Big Mac asked, shaking his head slowly. I saw his mom, and I still don't believe it either, Spike confirmed, patting Mac's shoulder. Good thing Cheerily got it all figured out.
Well, not quite all,
Cheerily admitted, scratching her muzzle a bit. Spike and Big Mac both stopped and looked at each other, confusion mirrored on each other's faces. What do you mean? Spike asked, turning back to the teacher. You weren't the one that figured out they were mother and cub.
It was really a guess on my part,
Cheerily explained, scraping a hoof against the ground.
I had a good feeling about it, of course, but to be honest, there wasn't any way I could be sure.
Spike felt more of a force for his chin. Cheerily just lowered her head, a bit of blush settling in as she gave the two stallions a small smile. You mean you tried to help that Ursa Major, he said, voice slowly raising in volume, and you weren't even sure she wouldn't come after us? It all worked out. Big Mac cut in, tapping Spike on the shoulder. Says, I won't expect anything else out of Cheerily.
Oh, why thank you, Big Mac,
Cheerily responded, lifting her head and smiling a little broader.
I just felt sorry for her is all.
Spike got out of his side and shook his head. His heart was hammering with the delayed realization of just how close he brushed death for. He scrunched his brow and counted before nodding in confirmation. Nightmare Moon, Cliff, Ursa Meyer, Ursa Major, fourth time that night. I just can't believe I've took on a bear cliff and look at us small. Big Mac grunted as the group started moving again. Dude, I feel just like the biggest bully on the playground.
Oh, don't worry, Big Mac. You didn't know, Chili assured him. Let's just worry about finding the others and stopping Nightmare Moon, alright?
Spike's hose slowed, horns shimmering a bit as he recovered some of his magic. The lights on his saddlebags lit up as thoughts began to wander. Cheerly's voice drifting out of focus. Hey, Spike, this is why we need to bring in mana potions. Bully, he muttered, eyes drooping to the hose of the ponies in front of him. And Nightmare Moon. He could feel something at the edges of his mind, just like before they had found a path on his own. Little by little, he could feel images returning. His cutie mark, Twilight, the blue filling the keep, and the strange reason they had been coming up again. Something bumped against his nose and he lifted his head. One of his notepads wavered in the air before him. Spike let out a sigh as he reached up and cut the pad in one hoof, cutting out the unconsciously activated spell. The words on the page caught his eye, though. He raised his eyebrows. He looked over them. The magical recording of the conversation between Celestia and Nightmare Moon sat before him. And there they were, in front of his eyes. The words he had forgotten earlier. No army, no champion to stand for you. He stumbled aside. Magic flared and sucked the pad back into his bag, but the thoughts were already swarming. Images as well as words written, spoken were flooding his mind. No champion. Celestia asked me to send the gods away, putting it all together at least like she knew what was coming. Blue filly, starry cape dragging behind her. Twilight applauding him as he showed off his new cutie mark. Something clicked in his mind as he looked up into a clear moon. Nightmare Moon's celestial eye, looking down upon all of Equestria, looking down at the cursed foals in Ponyville, on Twilight, wherever the forest might have been, on Spike himself and who knows how many others. All thanks to there being no pony standing between Nightmare Moon and Celestia. Because of me. It's all my fault.